Welcome to the Hollywood in Toto podcast, the right take on entertainment. The HiT cast offers a weekly look at Hollywood from a conservative point of view. Sick of media bias infecting Hollywood headlines? Tired of stars insulting your views? HiT has your back. Now, here's your host, Christian Toto.
Welcome to episode 44 of the Hollywood in Toto podcast. This week we're speaking with character actor turned director John Carroll Lynch. His new movie Lucky isn't just a thoughtful rumination on death, but it also gives us the last bravura performance by Harry Dean Stanton. Clearly Lynch was paying attention on those movie sets and TV shows all these years. Before our chat, I wanted to talk about the biggest Hollywood news in quite some time, Harvey Weinstein. The mega producer behind hits like Shakespeare in Love and Kill Bill, well, he's taking a leave of absence from his own company. He got busted for a whole bunch of sexual abuse allegations by the New Yorker magazine and also the New York Times. And it sounds like he's guilty as charged, at least by his statement. He didn't exactly say he didn't do it. As a matter of fact, he apologized for his behavior. And one of the weirdest apologies I've seen in quite some time. It was a bit aggressive. It was a bit pathetic. And also quite a bit political, too. He's lashing out at both President Trump and the NRA. Well, that's not the point when you're trying to apologize for some pretty egregious behavior against people in your employees. So that's a real problem. So what do we make of all this? Well, here's a list. For starters, his Hollywood career is done, over, kaput. He is past tense. There's no way he's getting back to his perch, at least anywhere near what he was before. And he was a major power player in Hollywood. Also, plenty of Hollywood folks knew about this or heard about this or suspected this or heard the whispers that he's been up to some really bad things, and they kept quiet. And that speaks volumes. Also, it's getting easier and easier these days for Hollywood actresses to speak out about sexism and much worse. That's a good thing. We're going to be hearing more and more about it, and we should. And actually, I talked to an actress a few weeks back, Angela Dixon, in episode 39 of the Hollywood in Toto podcast. She shared a story that was chilling, but not nearly as egregious as what we're hearing from the people who worked with Harvey Weinstein. Also, the Hollywood press, which has been doing a fairly good job of not just the original reporting on the story, but the follow-ups and showing about all his ties to the Democratic machine. I'm impressed, and I hope it continues, but you know what? They've had this story for a while. Sharon Waxman from the Wrap.com talked about having some kind of knowledge about this for years and years. And as someone kind of quipped on Twitter, well, too bad she doesn't have an outlet to talk about it. Yeah, she's got the Wrap. It's her company. She's the person in charge. And the Wrap.com didn't break this story. What does that tell you? Also, the next time a celebrity gets in the soapbox, particularly one who's been cozying up to Harvey for all these years, well, I think what he or she has to say is going to have a little less impact than before. What else can you say about this? Well, I think this is the first domino to fall. I suspect more and more women are going to come out. If these 8 women originally were saying that he was up to no good, then I think there's going to be a lot more women who either endured it or maybe even acquiesced to it under the pressure that they may not have a career without agreeing to some of his requests. It's all creepy. It's all terrible. And I think this story is going to grow and grow from here. But I wanted to focus on something else about Harvey Weinstein's situation. You know, back a few years ago, after a terrible shooting that involved the deaths of many people, he talked about creating a violent movie summit. This would be a get-together of some of the biggest names in Hollywood. And I think he mentioned Martin Scorsese, who obviously is a great filmmaker, but also one who makes a lot of violent stories. He said, we need to get together and talk and say, hey, is our work partly responsible for the culture in play? Should we be making less violent movies? What is our culpability with the situation, if any? We need to have that conversation. And I applauded that. I think it was actually rather smart because while it's certainly undetermined exactly how Hollywood and the gun culture are combined, well, shouldn't we talk about it? Shouldn't we have some conversations? And shouldn't the filmmakers at least be aware of what they put on the screen, what impact it could have on people? But of course, that big summit never happened. he didn't even talk about it anymore. And the press let him off the hook. All the times he talked to the media, no one seemed to ask him that question. I've never read about it. If I did, send me that link. I want to read it. I want to read what he said because I don't recall any information following that regarding the lack of a summit in question. But that wasn't his only comment about violence in the movies. Later, he talked about getting out of the violent movie business himself. Now, he's produced Kill Bill 1 and 2 and some other Quentin Tarantino movies. Quentin Tarantino movies are violent to the core. That's just him and his brand. But what Harvey Weinstein had said is, I can't do these kind of movies anymore. I can't make these movies and then try to speak out against gun violence. It doesn't work for me. I have to take a personal responsibility. And then some time passed. And then he produced The Hateful Eight, which was just as violent as every other Quentin Tarantino movie. Did anyone question him about that? Was he pinned down by a reporter about his hypocrisy? No. Well, now we know he's a hypocrite many times over. It's official. But that hardly helps the women he's hurt along the way.
You're listening to the Hollywood in Toto podcast, the right take on entertainment.
The latest hit tip of the week is Gerald's Game. It's a new Stephen King adaptation on Netflix right now. And it's not your typical Stephen King story. You're not going to see lots of ghosts and goblins or blood splattering here or there. There's a little bit of it, but certainly not as much as your usual King quotient. It's a story about a woman who is chained to her bed as part of a sexual experimentation with her husband, played by Bruce Greenwood. She is Carla Gugino, a great actress who's terrific here as well. And of course, he passes away, and she's left on the bed in the handcuffs, all alone, with no food, no water, and possibly no chance for rescue. That's the setup, and of course it's a very creative solution as to how to tell a story from here when you've got basically one simple setting. This is a smart film directed by Mike Flanagan, who's a really terrific young up-and-coming horror director. He also did Hush on Netflix, which is excellent as well. So if you haven't seen that one, check it out. This is one of the better Stephen King adaptations by far. It's smart, it's thoughtful, and intriguing, and this, from what I understand, stays pretty close to the King source material with a twist or two, which might even have made the story better. So check out Gerald's Game, available right now on Netflix streaming. Now let's get to my chat with John Carroll Lynch. He's the guy you've seen countless times on screens big and small, including The Walking Dead and The Founder with Michael Keaton. He's an imposing guy, really big, well over 6 feet, but you know what? He's got really impressive range as well. He can be tender, he can be tough, and he can be downright scary. And if you've seen him as Twisty the Clown in American Horror Story, I think you know what I mean. Now he's making his directorial debut with Lucky. Harry Dean Stanton is the star here. It's about a much older man who's looking at, well, maybe his final months on Earth. He's getting sicker, he's getting older, he's frail, but you know what? He's still feisty, he's still strong, and he's still alive. And he knows that means something, but not just with him, but with his community as well. It's a beautiful film. It's quiet, it's haunting, it's very smart, and it's an amazing first movie from any director, let alone a character actor making the switch for the first time. Here's my interview with John Carroll Lynch.
Well, first of all, thank you for joining us, John. You think about a first-time director, the projects that he could or couldn't do. You've got a movie with a really tight shooting schedule in Lucky. You've got a story that's deeply personal and fictional, the same. Do all those challenges kind of intrigue you as you approach it? Did they scare you? Was it a little bit of kind of combo of the two?
It was a tricky bit of business, but the screenplay and the opportunity to work with Harry was too good to pass up, and obviously it's something that I've wanted to do for a while, and it was just too juicy a project to turn down. So I was happy to take on all the challenges, both in terms of the schedule and in terms of Harry Dean.
When you think about actors and what they bring to a movie, you watch a Cary Grant movie. There's a presence, a style. You've seen his movies before. Harry brought so much to each role, and I think this one it comes out in a much more magnified way. Talk about it from a director's point of view. You've seen him on screen, like all of us, for years. When you're working with him one-on-one, what makes him so special? Why did he bring something so different and so unique? And why people are mourning his passing on social media. he wasn't a superstar, but we resonated with him so strongly. What was it about him that you could see working with him so closely?
Well, there's the first and foremost, he carries with him the history of American film, both in terms of his lifetime. That is, when he was born, they were still silent films, So he lived the entire history of talkies, and so he brings that with him. He also brings the all those years of being, westerns and rough guys and villains with him as well. With him, when you see him, he has a menace and a danger, as well as the beauty of his heart, the warmth of his heart. So that's all coming with him. But as an actor, to watch him work and to be able to, as a director, to watch each frame over and over and over again, I just marvel at his fundamental ability to never lie, to never act, and to always tell the truth. Just a pure presence on screen. It was a lesson.
Watching the movie, one of the things that I took away was the sense of community of these people working together, bickering, arguing, having great shared stories. And understand that the people behind the scenes, the actors, were lining up to work with him and be in this project. Does that help you tell the story as a director? Does that sort of almost like you're building a foundation and multiple bricks have already been laid?
Well, any successful film I've ever been in, the purpose of the project has been clearly set out, and every single person on the crew and in the cast is telling the same story. Is there to make the movie. You still there?
Yep.
Okay, great. Everybody is there to make the same movie, and that was true in this case as well. We were there to make the movie to celebrate Harry Dean, both as an actor and as a person, and to reflect his life in a fictional circumstance. It's almost as if we were working with. Well, we were working with one of the best actors in the 20th century on a project that was inspired by him personally. Mm-hmm. So his willingness to reflect that, to be that vulnerable in his work, was matched by everybody's willingness to go all the way out on the end of the beam, to do everything they could, not only to be in the film, but also to do the work that they did. So it was impressive.
Yeah. You looking at your career, you've worked with some of the biggest names, the biggest directors in Hollywood, and now, even though this is your first film, you've got decades behind you in front of the camera. You've got the experience of working with the Eastwoods, the Scorsese's. Was there a particular director who you think either matched your style or sort of influenced you when you first came on the set, or did you kind of just absorb it all and kind of bring something new to it?
I really can't. I really can't single anybody out other than that I've been watching people work for years, being a part of these projects, and to be able to have worked with all of these masters has certainly been influential to me. This screenplay, every single screenplay calls out for a style, calls out for visual choices and a vocabulary, and that's what this the screenplay in this movie calls out for, this vocabulary. I guess we'll find out in my second feature whether or not that's my vocabulary or not, because you can't tell the style. Like, for instance, as an example, Peter Bogdanovich, masterful director, when he did Last Picture Show and then when he did Paper Moon, there certainly was a transference of transitional piece of style. But then he did What's Up, Doc? And that is not the same, I mean, that was between the two, because Madeline Kahn was introduced as part of What's Up, Doc? I mean, how wonderful for that to happen as a director, when you get to use the four words and introducing Madeline Kahn in your credits. So, his style, his style of filmmaking in those three pictures is vastly different, and yet there's something spiritually the same about them all. And I guess that's what I would say. I mean, this movie, the style of it required a kind of silence in the frame. It required, it was a performance-driven film, and it was important that the camera not draw attention to itself. That's not what it's intended to do for the feature.
I read that you wanted to.
Might have a different one.
I was reading that you want to do more films after directing this. Does that excite you to kind of develop that voice, to kind of learn what your sort of aesthetic is on screen after acting for so many years?
Without a doubt. I started as an actor without any sense of what my aesthetic would be, both in terms of the acting style that I ended up, kind of wandering into, searching through the opportunities I've had to come to whatever style of acting anybody else wants to describe. But to direct, I would love to have the opportunity to continue to hone that and find out where to go from here. That being said, the best thing about directing for me is the opportunity to tell stories that aren't attached to a 6'4", 54-year-old, 250-pound man. That I can have the opportunity to contribute to stories in a deep and meaningful way that tells the stories of other people. I've always had a desire from the time I started acting to experience as best I can in this limited way that acting allows you the lives of other people and the stories of other people, and directing is an outgrowth for me of that desire. It's to express and experience the lives of other people, and to do it in a meaningful way that hopefully has an impact on the audience that comes to see them. So that's just a direct outgrowth of that desire.
Yeah, it's impossible to watch Lucky without thinking of not just the character's mortality, but your own mortality, no matter what age you are when you watch the movie. Did it change the way you think about the sort of the bigger issues in the movie of this consequence?
What I was most moved by when I first read the screenplay, and that was when I was considering acting in it. This was before they asked me to direct. What I was moved by, along with the opportunity to work with Harry Dean, was the sense that this movie asks me to ask questions about how I'm going to live today. Right? Mm-hmm. Not how I'm going to end up dealing with my mortality when it comes, but how I'm going to live today with that mortality in mind. That sense of this moment being precious and what am I going to do with it should be what every single person does with every moment, and it's just that my own death is hard to keep in mind, right? It slips away from me, it slips. It's like in my peripheral vision, and it's hard to keep it in focus because I think the machine of my body doesn't want to go there. Mm-hmm. So this movie is a warm and beautiful a story about a man who looks it straight in the eye and comes to a joyful place in living, which, how much, I can't think of a better story to tell, and I think that in some ways his atheism, the character's atheism, focuses that even more so because he doesn't have a second act, right? It's dramatic circumstances. He knows he's not going anywhere. This is it. So he is limited. His time is limited.
Yeah. Before I let you go, I want to just touch real quickly on American Horror Story. Your character's back, Twisty the Clown. And obviously the theme of this season is political, but it expands from there. And I know you can't stay too much because you'll get in trouble. But what can you talk about as far as sort of how the character and the phobia, how it all ties into the political theme? Is there anything you can kind of share?
Well, I don't know. I would say that there's certainly some commentary by the writers about people being clowns. I'll leave that to you to decide what that would be, but that we're terrified of them, and maybe we might be terrified of the clowns that are running the country. I don't know, but I would say that the paranoia, right, our unwillingness, it seems to me that what I've seen of the show, that there's an unwillingness on our part to really look at each other with compassion. We are on teams now, and that's really bad for us because it's not, politics, the partisanship is fine, but when it becomes tribe or when it becomes team and there's no possible way to work with anybody on the other side, that's a very dangerous place to be. And we have a lot of important things to deal with in our country that can't be dealt with by just half of us. So we got to get in the process of talking to each other in a respectful way, even when we disagree. And I think that this show is definitely exploring that.
Yeah, and it's actually a bit more balanced in its approach than I think people might have expected. We were just seeing the first couple episodes now, but it's a good point. Well, thank you, John Carroll Lynch. The new movie is Lucky. It is your directorial debut. The performance here by Harry Dean Stanton is unforgettable. And I have to say, on a personal note, I can't imagine a more perfect final film for any actor, let alone someone as amazing as Harry Dean Stanton. So thank you so much for that, and we look forward to more of your films. Keep up.
Thank you very much.
Well, thanks again for listening. Don't forget to check out HollywoodandToto.com for both the show notes and, of course, the latest entertainment news. Please follow me at Twitter at HollywoodandToto. And we'd love it if you leave a podcast review over at iTunes. See you next week.